more informal and intimate gathering than it was last night. We don't have any pre-planned questions. People are just here to see what you have to say. And instead of doing a long introduction myself of you, we thought each of you could just introduce yourselves, however you want to present yourself, and then I won't skew it in any certain way. And then, as Sean indicated, we will just take the mic around and people will have questions, and they usually have a lot of questions. This is not a debate format. This is not like he said and one the other and then the other. This is just informal. We're asking you questions so we can learn more about you. So we're going to do this alphabetically. So that means that Elaine Price will be our first candidate up here. So Elaine, if you would come up. And Sean, we have to use this one?
No, we're going to use the mobile mic because I don't think that'll reach.
Okay.
But I'll have both candidates up on stage at the same time. And
Okay, you can just come up and stand
forth.
up here. So go ahead, Christie, and come up too.
And ladies, you kind of have to hold the microphone like this. You have to talk directly into the microphone so everyone can hear you. Thanks.
Well, so Elaine is going to do her little intro. Couldn't Christie sit down for that time while Elaine does her intro and then come up instead of
Christie can sit down, but we'll do Elaine intro, then we'll do Christie, and then we'll throw some questions.
Okay. All right.
Hello, everybody. I'm Elaine Price. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Iowa. Lived in a small town, about 2,000 people. Moved to Coeur d'Alene in 1990. Still live in the first house that I bought when I first moved here. Go back a little bit into my history. My very first job was at 8 years old. I took over my brother's paper route with my sister, and he moved on to shoveling snow and mowing lawns. And so once I was done with the paper route, I took over his mowing lawns. So I've pretty much been working since I was 8 years old. When I was 15, I got my first real job, making $2.10 an hour working in a restaurant. Had the key to the restaurant, was doing deposits, setting up the restaurant, getting it ready for the day at 15. At 16, I moved on to the big money. I was making $3.25 an hour working as a waitress plus tips, and I was excited. And that's always kind of been my fallback job. If I needed a job somewhere, restaurant and waitressing was my fallback job. Once we moved to Coeur d'Alene, I started out at the Coeur d'Alene Resort working in room service. That was my very first job here in town. Moved on to Perkins, worked as a waitress at Perkins, moved up into management there. When I left the resort, I left because I had 2 boys. They're a year and a day apart. So I had my second son. I realized that having 2 small children and working was not going to work out. Plus the daycare situation when you have young kids is just not a little bit more spendy than what I expected it to be. So I tried to be a stay-at-home mom for a little while. I got married when I was 18. Unfortunately, that relationship was not the relationship I expected it to be. I ended up having to be the breadwinner of the family. So we kind of reversed roles. He was the stay-at-home dad, and I worked. So I was very dedicated to making sure my kids had a roof over their head and food in their belly and clothes on their back. After I left Perkins, I went to Fred Meyer, and I started out as a part-time cashier, and I specifically took jobs so that I could be home when my kids were done with school. Once I realized that my marriage wasn't going to work out, I took a position in management so that I could make sure that I had money to feed my family or take care of my family. That management position required me to go wherever they asked me to go. So I ended up working in Spokane. So I was working 45 hours a week, driving an hour to Spokane, back and forth, and being a single mom. I feel blessed that had the foundation that I had that my parents gave me to be able to handle that situation. I was involved in the community as much as I could, being a single mom. I was a soccer mom. We participated in park and rec soccer, so I was a volunteer coach, brought snacks, did whatever I could. My boys were in Little League. I taught Little League 1 year. Oh my goodness. Felt bad for the boys that year, but I had fun and they had fun. So I've been involved in other volunteering. I did taught Sunday school at my church. Currently, I'm the financial director at my church. I've been involved with 2nd Street Commons, which feeds the homeless, and we get donations for them, as well as I help. They don't have a kitchen down there, so we help coordinate to make food and get it down there so they can microwave it and feed it to the homeless. I'm also part of a group called Impact Club. I'm not sure if anybody's heard what Impact Club is, but the whole idea of Impact Club is you can give a small donation to one group, or you can pool your money together and give a bigger donation to a group. And I just think that that's a fabulous. The last Impact Club, they gave $10,200 to Safe Passages. So that makes an impact to that nonprofit. My husband and I, I got remarried in 2014 to a wonderful man who has been super supportive and encouraged me to, I was thinking about going back to school, and he encouraged me to go back to school, and I went back to school and got an associate's degree in accounting. Got that in 2017. And without his support, I probably wouldn't have done that. I'm just a regular citizen, like the rest of you. And why am I running for city council? Because I could choose to sit on the sidelines and complain about the way the city is going and what I think it is not the right direction for the city, or I could choose to jump in and try to make a difference. I feel like I give a different perspective than what's on the council already, because I am a worker from the city. I ran, I was in charge of a multi-million-dollar grocery store, serving or not serving, but working with the citizens of Coeur d'Alene. I'm just a regular person, but I have a different perspective that I can offer the city council. Things that I'd like to see accomplished through the city council is managed growth. We need to have our comprehensive plan in place, and I know they're working on it, but I would love to see it specific so that the developers know exactly where we want to see the density, what we want to see our city to look like, the character of the city that we want to retain, the neighborhoods that we want to retain. Recently there was a historic district meeting. I live in the Garden District, and we had a meeting, and so the city is talking about establishing historic districts in Coeur d'Alene. I am a person who does believe in private property rights, so I think that we need to keep that in mind when we're doing this. But I think that if we were to have these districts in mind, when we look at rezoning and we see that there's a historic district there, then the council can use that to make better decisions on whether that's the right place for this development to go or not. I also am an advocate to bring back the 2-hour free parking. I know that we have found what I consider a Band-Aid for it with the pass that they are looking at implementing at the beginning of the year. My idea on the 2-hour free parking is that we should be able to enjoy our parks if we go down there for I remember having my 2 boys and us going down to the park and just spending an hour there. I don't think that our citizens should be paying for parking, even if it's $10 I've been there. $10 was a lot to manage. And I don't think that we should ask our citizens that don't have a lot of money to have to do that. I think we should go back to the 2-hour free parking, increase the 3rd, 4th, and 5th hour, and they can still generate the money that we're looking at generating to help with our parks. I guess what I consider my biggest accomplishments, 2 of them in raising my 2 boys here in Coeur d'Alene. Saddest part about that is neither of them can afford to live in the city that they were born and raised in. And I like to see that we work towards a solution for that. My second biggest accomplishment, I feel, is me putting myself up here, putting myself out in front of the people, being open to criticism, being open to question my intentions, and coming from a relationship where I was told that I wasn't worth the skin that I was in. So for me to be able to pull myself up from what was a low point in my life to wanting to serve the people of Coeur d'Alene, being willing to put myself out there, I feel is probably my biggest accomplishment.
Thank you. I want to make sure we save enough time for that's awesome. Thank you so much. Christie?
Good afternoon. Well, a little bit about me. I really enjoyed Elaine's story. I was born in Spokane, lived there till I was 10, and then I became an Idahoan, and I've really pretty much been a local ever since. I went to... Oh, all right. Put my big girl voice on.
Yep.
Right there, okay. Spit into the microphone.
Tilt it up.
Tilt it, okay. Feels awkward. So anyway, I graduated from Lakeland High School and then off to North Idaho College for a short time, and then off to the U.S. Air Force. I was a law enforcement specialist. I got the law enforcement bug, and when I got out of the military, I got married, had a baby, but I always wanted to get back to my chosen career. So I applied to the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, and I spent 26 years there working my way up through the ranks, working in patrol, working in detectives, in community relations. I became the spokesperson. I was the first school resource officer, and then I became the supervisor of the school resource officers and the supervisor of the detective division. So I spent an awful lot of time really immersed in this community. I was the neighborhood watch coordinator. I went out into the neighborhoods. I solved crimes, I solved issues, and constantly worked on behalf of the citizens of the city. During that time, I also wanted to be involved, aside from just the police department, I thought it was really important to be involved in my community in other ways. So there was an opportunity to run for the Coeur d'Alene School Board. I chose that opportunity. First, I was chosen from a group of applicants to fill John Getty's absence. I finished out his time, and then I stood for election twice and spent 8 years with the Coeur d'Alene School Board. That was my first introduction into big public budgets, dealing with massive growth, learning a lot about education, a lot about governance, state laws, federal laws. It's a steep learning curve to work in a public arena like that. But I really enjoyed it. Through that time, my son was a sophomore in high school, and it occurred to me that I hadn't yet finished my degree, and I really wanted to model the right behavior to him. So I had to work like crazy. I had 2 years to finish my bachelor's degree. And I did, but I have a lot of empathy for students who work full-time and go to school full-time, raise families, because I was in that position. So my son graduated from high school. I graduated at the same time. We had a joint party, and that was all fine and good, and he went off to college. And I might have mentioned my degree is in criminal justice and communications. During my education time, the last time at NIC, I really appreciated what the educators had done for me. I thought I knew a lot about education being on the K-12 board, but higher education is completely different. And I felt like I should try to give back. They had done so much for me. So an opportunity came along to run for election on the North Idaho College Board. I was still on the Coeur d'Alene School Board, and I still had a couple of years in my term. And I thought, well, I can do this. This will be fun. I can be a bridge between higher education and K-12. And so I ran for election and I won. And I am in my 15th year at North Idaho College. I'm currently board chair. I've held that position a few times. We focus on a lot of the same things. Certainly education, massive growth, public budget that needs to be managed, governance overall. It's just, again, a tremendous learning curve, but I've gained so much from those two positions. When I was at the police department, I also focused a lot on some of those same issues. And this town has changed a lot. Since we've all been here a long time, we've watched the evolution, which is kind of fun, but also it brings a lot of challenges. So I worked hard on strategic plans for the police department. We dealt with growth. We figured out how to do more with less. And it was a great training ground for me in dealing with some of these comprehensive issues. I am someone who really likes to volunteer. I like to immerse myself in the community. And so along the way, there was an opportunity to apply to the board of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. My mentor, role model, Rocky Watson, had held that law enforcement position. He was retiring, and he said, I'd like you to apply for this. So I did, and I was accepted to that board. I've spent 12 years with the most fantastic people on the planet. The mission is clear. We promote human rights, civil rights, and dignity for all. And we work very hard on behalf of victims that have been discriminated against. Our work is done sometimes very quietly. We're a very highly recognized organization. For the last 38 years, you know some of the work. You know one of our founders, Tony Stewart. And certainly our efforts throughout the years with dealing with the Aryan Nations, Westboro Baptist Church. A lot of our work we don't talk about because we like to protect privacy, but we were certainly very instrumental and brought forward the anti-discrimination ordinance to the city, and we were successful in getting the city council to approve that. And we're very proud of that work, and we're very proud that our citizens are protected from discrimination. I also came a time in my career, where I kind of thought maybe I'll retire. It was a very difficult year. It was 2015, and in May of 2015, my friend Sergeant Greg Moore was killed. So it was really hard. It was a tough mourning period. I can't even really explain it to you, what his family went through, and certainly what his family at the police department went through. And we just, we struggled. Through that, I had some time to think. I don't have any bullet holes in me. I've made it to the end. I can retire and I can do other things in the community. So I did choose to retire when I could at the end of the year. And then the year after that, I worked with the mayor, and we focused on the K27 Memorial in the park, and we raised the private funds, and we made it happen. His family and his law enforcement friends, they have a place to go visit, and we're very proud of that. The year after that, well, immediately after I retired, I got a dog, because I thought, I don't want to get fat, and I tried. Anyway, and I have to say, I saw Elaine's photo in the Nicholsworth, and we have the same kind of dog. We have great taste in dogs. They're different colors, but they're healers. And if Norm Gizzle were here, he always says that his dog's cuter, but no, our dogs are cuter. So I focus a lot walking my dogs on the trails. Really enjoyed that, and there was an opportunity to apply for the Park and Rec Commission for the city. And I thought, well, that'll be really fun, something so different from law enforcement, something so joyful. And so, not that law enforcement isn't, it can be very joyful, but it can also be kind of rough. So I applied for that position, I was accepted, and I'm in my second term as a Park and Rec Commissioner. And we're working on major projects. We've just completed the design and the budget for the Atlas Park. We work on the budgets for all of the parks and the upkeep, and it's really important in the city budget that revenue comes in to pay for the mowers, the trucks, the extra personnel. Atlas itself is going to be tremendous. And so that's where some of those parking fees come in. I look at that a little bit like, well, $400,000 came in from, you pay $1 to park, $1 an hour. The mayor did understand that it can be a burden for some families, so he said about trying to make a local residence pass, and that has happened. That will be helpful to families. But that $400,000 from visitors, because this is a huge area for visitors, we all know that, they're helping pay for our parks, and they're using our parks, and I'm glad that they're helping, but I also am glad for the relief to local families. I am running for council because I am absolutely a huge fan of the city of Coeur d'Alene. I've been immersed in the city business. I can hit the ground running. I have the experience in the background. I truly enjoy working in public policy, public budget, going to public meetings. Some people want to put a fork in their eye. I like to go to those dry meetings. And I just like being involved. I think like most people, we like to be involved. And I feel I still have something to offer. With being retired, I have more time, and I'm happy to jump in. The most pressing issue we've all seen is growth. With growth becomes other issues. Public safety, huge issue. I have a lot of experience in that regard, and I have a lot of ideas. From public safety becomes quality of life issues. I worked in the neighborhoods extensively, and that was the biggest deal. What's my quality of life? And the smallest of issues become big issues. The city of Coeur d'Alene currently has one code enforcement officer. I don't think that's acceptable. I want to work with this current council and shift those priorities in the budget. There are plenty of instances out there where neighbors are dealing with these ongoing nagging issues, and the police department can't get to it because they don't have the personnel. They just can't possibly keep up. So I want to shift some of that and focus on priorities in the budget. I also think that the comprehensive plan is a fantastic thing. I'm so glad the city has procured the money for that. It's really important for all of us to get involved. We have an opportunity to say what we think the city should look like in housing, roads, commercial, all these things that are important feed into the comprehensive plan. And so I would certainly, you're all a bunch of active people. I know you're going to be at those meetings, you're going to give input. I'm looking forward to doing that myself. I think we have a wonderful future here in the city of Coeur d'Alene. I want to be part of it. I want to keep the city as beautiful as it is. And I'm going to ask for your vote on November 5th for city council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. As I have the microphone. License abuse of power. Okay. So recently, I know Christie brought up, the ordinance that was passed. That was a few years back. But recently, we had an opportunity to pass a proclamation that was read at the city council meeting, I think a couple weeks ago. And I know you were a part of that, Christie. But I want to give you both kind of an opportunity to maybe dive into this topic a little bit deeper. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. You brought up the Aryan nations. It was my family that was attacked and spurred that lawsuit that we were able to kind of, as a community, wrap ourselves around and fight back and ultimately push them out of our community. However, they're not gone. And we know this because we've had different instances recently encroaching on our community once more. And this has raised my awareness once again. And I think it was important that we were able to work with the mayor to get that proclamation said. But I don't want that to just be a flash in the pan. I don't want that to be just something we did and everyone forgets about it this week. So I think that knowing that we have groups like the Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer who are targeting communities around us, including Spokane and Montana, Oregon, they're all around us. And it's just, I feel like a matter of time before they want to stake their claim back here again. We are kind of fertile ground, given our past history. So knowing that, as a city council member, when elected, what would you do to help raise community awareness? I know it's a very sensitive topic because there's economic, there could be some economic impact of raising that awareness, but I think also we are faced with an economic impact as it stands. As people that I've talked to from around the country, and specifically on the West Coast, they like to avoid Coeur d'Alene because of that stigma that we still have. So I'd like to understand what would you do to promote Coeur d'Alene in a positive way, so that now we can be a beacon of hope and inclusivity, as opposed to that bad stigma we had in the past. I'll start with you, Christie.
Thank you. Well, Sean, the proclamation was good. I was happy to be part of that. That was a long question, but I know what you're getting to.
Christie, can you clarify, just make sure everybody here knows what the proclamation is that we're talking about?
Yes, it was celebrating the Constitution, essentially, and we focused it around human rights.
Okay.
Sean, you know the task force. We've had a long history here. As a council person, I would continue to work with the task force. I'm not going anywhere. We don't always broadcast everything we do, but if there's something brewing out there, we usually hear about it. If we find out about some of those nasty flyers going around that are just heinous, we make sure that the victims report those right to law enforcement. Even if there isn't something that we can do immediately, that law enforcement can't do immediately, they gather the intel. Trust me, they have a lot of intel. That's their job. When I retired, before I retired, I was the supervisor in charge of the crime analyst position, and we focused entirely on intel for groups like that. The task force works tirelessly to combat these kind of things. Now, we're not going to go, be very direct, we're not going to go out on the curb and shout back at a group that might come to town, like Westboro Baptist Church, or when the Aryans were here for the parade. I was a police officer then. I was in a position where I had to protect their safety. It was very awkward, but everybody has a right to be safe. And so that's not our style. We follow the teachings of Dr. King. And so we won't, Dr. King, Tony says this best, Dr. King never went to a Klan meeting, and we're not going to a Klan meeting. We hold our own events, and we focus on promoting civil rights and human rights. If there's a victim, we have stood up time and time again. We go to court with them. We give them all the support they need. Our own senator here, Mary Lou, worked hard on passing human rights legislation. So you have a very powerful group in this community, and you can lean on us. And as a council person, I will continue to lean on that group. We don't want a toehold here either. Tony worked for years with the Chambers of Commerce and leaders in business, promoting our beautiful city and getting away from that god-awful reputation. And we will continue to do that. You have my pledge on that.
Thank you. Elaine?
I guess I see it as we as citizens have to stand up and bond together and show what the city of Coeur d'Alene is all about. I appreciate the fact that we do have the board that Christie is on, the Human Rights Task Force, and all that they do. They can't get a toehold in this city if we as citizens stand up and don't buy into it. They can only get a toehold in the city if there's a weak link that allows them in. So I, as a city council member, would lead by example and promote a good cooperation with the Human Rights Task Force and promote the citizens to behave in a manner that would not allow them to come back into this area. It's sad to hear that your family went through what they went through. I was here when all of that happened. And it was beyond belief that this was happening in such a beautiful, I felt like I was home the first time I set foot in here, and the fact that that was going on was just hard to believe. But we got rid of them. And I don't think there's anybody in the city that wants to see them back. And I think that that's the message that the city council needs to send.
Thank you.
I'm going to switch tacks here a little bit. You have both mentioned the beauty of our city and the beauty of the area to live in, and I think we all agree with that. You have both mentioned or made comment to the mass influx of population, the growth that is having effect, and I would like to know what your positions are and what you think the city can do to help in the issue of climate change. How and what can the city do to promote the protection of our lake that is still receiving untreated drain runoff? And where will you come down in the fight to maintain a decent, livable Coeur d'Alene?
Once again, I think it comes down to individuals. We've got to choose to do what we can to make a difference. When it comes to the runoff in the lakes, I think that it should be identified and addressed. And I think that there's certain groups out there that should be taking care of it and looking at it, and I would encourage that to happen. I think that the city is moving towards more bike paths to eliminate the car traffic, the individual car traffic. I would encourage the city to look at our transit system as well, to give that as an opportunity. I don't think that we have a good transit system to allow workers to be able to hop on a bus and get downtown, or if they live downtown to get up north. So I would encourage that to help with the car traffic that we have. Once again, as to individuals also need to look at what they can do to walk instead of take their car or ride a bike, and look at it that way as well. So.
Thank you. Christie?
Thank you. Well, I think we got to promote that healthy lifestyle. We got to get rid of plastic bags in the city of Coeur d'Alene. I traveled to Bend, Oregon quite a bit to see my son, and first of all, most of the stores don't have bags at all. You come in with a bag, or you're going to buy a bag, and it's going to be a paper bag. And I don't see why we couldn't possibly do that here. I think I shop at just pretty much every store. Yeah, we have to work on it, but we have to take those things seriously. Plus, we need to follow the lead of North Idaho College. You know, the students there focus a lot of programs on going green. Our facilities are focused on going green. I'm excited about a new building that will hopefully come online. We're going to do an addition onto the Meyer Health Science building, and it's focused on science. Walking up to the building, the green space, everything is around science. And so those are some of the things the city could do. The city could certainly, anytime they're going to redesign a building or build a new building, they could focus on green energy. So just a few, to name a few. Certainly agree with the vehicle traffic and how we can all as individuals step up.
Hi, my question has to do with citizen engagement on the city council level. There was two things that I guess spurred a lot of citizen activity with the city council recently. One was the parking, and the other was the Atlas Mill project. I was really sad because my neighbor, who's a very reasonable person, very moderate, and he went to all 50 meetings, and he told me they didn't listen to a word we said. Whether that's true or not, I'm not even here to debate. And with the parking issue, we saw what happened is, well, there wasn't enough perhaps public input, and then you have citizens coming together angry. So if either one of you actually are in office, what are you going to do to ensure that there's better transparency with citizens, that we are actually engaged, and not just the civically engaged people like myself that come to meetings, but I mean the average person, and do the outreach to get the input so that you don't have these bad feelings?
Well, perception's everything. If your neighbor feels like he didn't get to have input, then that's his perception, and that's the way it's going to be going forward. I am on the Park and Rec Commission. I was at a number of those meetings, and the Atlas project, we took a ton of public input. All of the design is based around public input, and I think we're all going to love that park. But again, if that's his perception, it's real. The city does not have a public information officer, and that was my job at the police department. And it's just been phased out, and I know it's a budget consideration, but communication's everything to citizens. You've got to constantly be pushing that communication out, giving people an opportunity to be involved, letting them know when the meetings are, what's available, and giving tons of opportunity for workshops where everyone can speak. The other issue on the parking, I know that became a sore subject. Again, I think it was terrible communication. It just happened, and people showed up and heard about it and thought, I gotta pay a ton of money now to use Coeur Field. When the whole idea really is that with all the people visiting from out of the area, we're gonna capture some of their tourist dollars. And it's either they help pay for the upkeep of the parks, or it's gotta go on the back of the local taxpayers, because it has to be paid for, especially with the expansion of Atlas. There's just not enough crew at the city, and they're going to have to hire more. They got to buy more mowers. They got to plant more sod. And so the whole idea was to capture some of that tourist dollars and help pay. So they're using our parks, they're using our facilities. But it fell apart because of poor communication. And so if I'm on the council, I had that job. I feel like I could step up on my own and do quite a bit. But I would certainly push for a public information officer.
I appreciate that question, because as I mentioned, being a single mom and not being able to be as active in the city as I wanted to be, that I think that that's where the city could focus maybe some of the information on is being able to get it to people who can't come to the meetings. I think it's great that they now have the meetings online so that people can view the meetings online and view it in their time when they have time, instead of actually having to go to the meetings to participate. I appreciate Kiki Miller has been working very hard on establishing the webpage on the City of Coeur d'Alene to give out as much information as she can. I agree. It's getting that information out in different medias to meet the different needs of all the citizens of Coeur d'Alene. As with the parking issue, I understand that we're a tourist area and we want to capture it. Those people are using our parks, and I agree with that. The citizens of Coeur d'Alene usually go to the park for 1 to 2 hours. The visitors go to the park for 4 or 5 hours, and that's why I think the solution to that is charging for that 3rd, 4th, and 5th hour more. That way they are contributing the monies that we're looking for and not having the citizens of Coeur d'Alene, in my opinion, paying a double tax on that, because we pay for it in our property taxes. So to answer your question, I really feel that we as the city need to develop different forms of media, websites, and put it in the newspaper. You know, have a section just for the City of Coeur d'Alene, the things that are going on, workshops. And then, once again, make sure that we keep up that website so people can see it on the time when they have time.
I have a question. Either one of you being elected will be going into a city council with the second term of a mayor who was unopposed. When we have council meetings now, there is hardly any disagreement on council and everyone votes together. Do you see yourselves thinking independently and confronting each issue with your own thought process? Or do you see yourselves going along with business as usual in City Hall?
I look at this position as, right now, I'm interviewing for a job because I will be working for every one of you. I don't owe my vote to anybody except you guys. So I will be an independent thinker, and I will keep you in mind whenever I make my decisions.
Thank you. Well, I know the mayor and council very well. I have a good working relationship with them. I've worked on a number of projects with them as board chair at North Idaho College. With that said, they wish that I would give them my vote. I feel the same as Elaine. We're coming here as individuals. We're not about to just nod our head and go along. I won't. I do want to have a working relationship, but I'm not a shy, quiet person. I speak out. You can look at some of the meetings at North Idaho College. It's not very sleepy. We're all very engaged because that's what you expect of us. You expect us to do our homework and come prepared to discuss. And that's what I'll do on the city council. My vote is what the input is from the citizens. It's not whatever the mayor wants or the council wants. But with that said, they're a good group of people. They're hardworking people. They're not nefarious. They work hard, and but we all have to come there with our own opinions and our own thoughts and stand as independents.
Thank you.
Is there a possibility that the better parking financial deal could be Kootenai County, not just City of Coeur d'Alene?
Yes.
So let me understand your question, Nils. That better part, you mean just
Well, isn't there a deal that the citizens of Coeur d'Alene would get the better parking deal than those coming from the outside?
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Could the Kootenai County get that better deal?
Well, it can certainly be proposed, Nils, that Kootenai County doesn't pay the taxes in the city residents do. So I don't know how well it would go over. It could certainly be proposed. The mayor did work hard and understand on trying to get a local residence pass, and I think that's probably helped. The rest of the council approved it. It could be proposed, see where it goes.
Thank you.
And I agree with what Christie just said. The idea was that alleviate the locals having to pay for parking, and they considered Kootenai County tourists visiting here and not paying their share, so that's why they left it up to just the city residents.
All right, ladies, we have just a couple minutes left before 1 o'clock. I'm going to offer you a 1 minute closing statement to win over our votes. Well, go ahead and start with you, Elaine, since you have the mic.
I just want to impress that I am not a politician. I don't have a government background, but I have a passion for this city, and I want to represent the citizens of this city. I'm just a regular person, just like you guys. And so I would represent your vote on the city council. So that's all I'm asking, is just to give me a fair chance that I can be a representative of you, and I ask that you vote for me on November 5th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I too want your vote on November 5th. I would very much enjoy serving on the city council. I bring the experience and the background, and I'm ready to do it. I'd like to thank my opponent. This is the second time that we've been together, and I think she's been very, very kind. I would like to tell you that I do have the endorsement of Ron Ettinger, which means a lot to me. I spent my entire 26 years in the police department working with Ron. He's a role model and a mentor. I also have the endorsement of the police department, the firefighters, and they know me. They know what kind of a worker I am. They know about my integrity. And so I very much appreciate their endorsement. And I really look forward to your support on November 5th.
Thank you, ladies. Everybody give them a round of applause. We know sticking your neck out and stepping up in our community is a big deal. So we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.